It's been a while, but I'm back with a bunch of snazzy new products from Avalon King to feature, including a super easy to use ceramic coating that boasts a turbocharged cure time. So stay tuned to see me methodically spread that, as well as a few other fresh formulations over the various surfaces of both my own car and those of a supercharged Corvette. Now, while I'd initially planned to coat the exterior of this eye-catching Corvette with Avalon King's American-born new Max product, the combination of windy weather, single strip-lit garage and attention-seeking furry friend who was intent on lending a paw meant I thought it'd probably be better just sticking to washing, wiping and spritzing it over with the equally eye-catching new cleaning and maintenance products instead. I looked to perform a more controlled application of the coating on my own car a few days later, and while that would inevitably increase the overall faff factor, would also mean that I could keep a close eye on the product's performance, which I wouldn't have been able to do if I'd used it on this slice of Welsh-kept Americana. But either way, with the annual Stars and Stripes show just around the corner, a more summer sun forecast to beat down on my exposed red paintwork, a spruce up of the Vet and subsequent ceramic coat of the Z was just what Uncle Sam ordered. So with a new wheel cleaner in the supplied lineup, it made sense to give the C7's 20-inch gloss black items a good going over first. So once they and their surrounding arches have been pre-rinsed off and out with the pressure washer to knock back any loose dirt, went ahead and generously applied the frothy Rim Reaper product to all areas of the wheel, starting with the rear parts, which tend to bear the brunt of unsightly brake dust and grime, and so the sooner they're exposed to cleaner the better. Finishing up front with an orderly application to the spokes, face and tyre walls, as this versatile stuff is formulated for effective use on rubber too, so thought why not? Not being an active cleaner, you can get straight to work agitating it over with some appropriate shampoo primed brushes, as I did here. And while on initial inspection these wheels didn't appear to be too deeply ingrained with dirt, both those and the cleaner were brand new to me, so it still made sense to go through the methodical motions to ensure they were left as clean as they realistically could be, which included not only brushing in and around the outwardly visible nuts and spokes, but also the chunky painted brake calipers on which any overlooked spots of dirt would stick out like a sore thumb, as well as the barrels surrounding them. So spent some time on each area of each wheel, finishing up with the tyres, which I think were sporting some residual dressing product and so needed a fair bit of chemical application and mechanical agitation to sufficiently strip back before going on to thoroughly rinse everything off. Before committing to cleaning the bright yellow body, I thought I might as well put what remained of the Rim Reaper to use on the Corvette's iconic quad poo chutes, as it just wouldn't have been right leaving them caked in supercharged carbon. So after dousing the tips in wheel cleaner, which so long as you don't let it dry in my experience is generally quite effective, brush them out and over with a couple of different detailed brushes to cut back any superficial but unsightly soot, before rinsing them out to remove the majority of the diluted chemical residue, so I could then move on to a windy pre-wash. Although Avalon King only sent over a bottle of their Sadistic Suds and not the hydrophobic Shockwave shampoo, this is the one designed to do the deep cleaning prior to protecting, so suited me in this car just fine. And because it can be used in snow foam fashion as well as traditionally from a bucket, didn't need to reach for another off-brand product to give the car a good contactless soak, as an inch of this in the bottom of my heavy duty foam lance was all that was needed to thoroughly blanket things over with a nice layer of stable suds. And while I'd usually prefer to perform a more in-depth pre-clean with some more potent products on a car I've never personally tended to before, a shampoo-based snow foam and rinse was really all this dusty garage-kept motor called for prior to being contact clean. But I still spent some time in my new Adidas car wash clogs, which I was also taking the opportunity to test out, ensuring the exterior was as free from abrasive loose dirt as it realistically could be. I'd mixed up a strong bucket of Sadistic Suds prior to pre-cleaning, so as soon as I'd finished rinsing things off, got to work washing the Corvette over from top to bottom with one of Avalon King's XL size Chenille wash mitts, which I shall probably use on a more frequent basis, as it's a top quality item that holds onto a hell of a lot of shampoo, and while the various gloss black bits were for the most part vinyl wrap, so long as you employ a bit of common sense and work with any exposed edges rather than against them, can be treated in pretty much the same way as the rest of the car. When washing a car in preparation for protecting it, you want to be as rigorous as possible, but because I wouldn't be polishing this particular one before spritzing it over with Avalon King's ceramic and graphene infused topper sprays, I had to try and strike a balance between ensuring things were sufficiently clean while not incessantly scrubbing away to the extent I instilled a bunch of additional unsightly swirl marks, which I think for the most part I did successfully here. Then once the Vet's various yank curves, nooks and crannies, of which I think it sports just the right amount, had been sufficiently washed over with the super plush mitt, were thoroughly rinsed off with the pressure washer one last time to leave everything free from suds and loose dirt and ready for a damn good drying off. I didn't really fancy drawing a heavy twist loop towel over the soft black vinyl wrapped and edged surfaces, so opted to thoroughly blow dry the car instead, which I figured would both reduce physical impact while hopefully also driving water out from vents, panel gaps, cracks and crevices that can serve to leak it all over your subsequent spritzing and buffing efforts. So spent a few methodical minutes with the twin turbine machine, ensuring all areas including the wheels and tyres were free from rinse water and ready for further treatment. Before getting to grips with the remaining paintwork specific products, I had a graphene enriched tyre dressing to try out, so now that these Michelin items have been successfully stripped back with the Rim Reaper, went ahead and worked some of this Wrathene stuff over their surface with a sturdy sponge applicator, and while from a neat application perspective that worked a treat, didn't expect the dressing to essentially flash off afterwards. But to be fair, looking back, it is described as a non-fling shield type product, so maybe instead of the usual superficially rejuvenated finish, this is instead formulated to leave an almost invisible protective barrier behind to repel dirt and make future maintenance cleaning more straightforward. But either way, one thing was for certain, and that was that these tyres wouldn't require any buffing back. So after treating each one to a generous application of graphene infused tyre protectant, let it soak in and or flash off and left it at that. Now, while I could have then gone ahead and simply spritzed the ceramic and graphene spray protectants over the Corvette's exterior and called it jobs are good at that, thought because I'd flaked out on properly ceramic coating the car, the least I could do was wipe it down with an IPA spray to ensure I got the most out of the other new products. And while Avalon King do have their own prep product, didn't have a bottle of that to hand here, so had to temporarily go off-brand, but they all essentially do the same job of stripping back any unseen product residues that can jeopardise the adherence of new ones. So spent a bit of time thoroughly wiping things down, including the wheels, as being gloss black they deserved a spritz too, all under the watchful eye of detailing doggo, who was intent on making sure his master's pride and joy was sufficiently fettled. So with the Corvette now essentially naked, I could go ahead and put the final few Psycho spray protectant products to the test, starting with the ceramic based one, which replaces the old Armour Shield Light that was formulated for maintaining the Armour Shield 9 coating. Now this stuff can be used for either keeping the updated Max coating in good shape or as a standalone protectant, which for a garage car like this should provide around 6 months worth of glossy looking protection. And it's simply a case of spritzing it onto the surface, spreading it over with a fresh general purpose towel, then buffing it back to a slick high shine with a more plush one, which took a bit more elbow grease than it probably should have on the hot black vinyl here, but such are the joys of working under the sporadic rays of the unforecast summer sun. Although I was performing a dedicated dry application here just to try and extract the most in terms of shine and durability, it's worth mentioning that these Psycho products can also be used wet following a final rinse, which with a drying towel serving to remove the majority of the product's residue would save you considerable time. But either way, once I felt about half of the car had been treated with this stuff, reached for the graphene infused Psycho Pro to treat the other half to see if I could discern any difference application and finish wise between the two. Being a bit more potent, it's recommended that the graphene formulation be sprayed onto a towel rather than directly over the surface, but aside from that it's pretty much the same procedure as with the ceramic version, and while it is a tad more expensive than that stuff, should provide an additional 3 to 6 months worth of protection, so for an outdoor kept car at least is likely worth the extra few quid. But saying that, if you're prepared to reapply the standard Psycho at least once every 6 months, which realistically you should be, then you can technically keep your superficial protection ticking over indefinitely without spending any more. Now, I can't honestly say that I could detect any difference in either ease of use or finish between the two products here, but wind and sun do make detecting nuances in things like gloss and surface slickness difficult. But regardless, both serve to breathe some new life back into the panels of a car that didn't look too bad to begin with. So assuming you're not planning on going to town in the direct sun like me, would happily recommend either for use on yours. Now, because I've been working in the wind, there'd inevitably been a bit of spritzy overspray from both of the protectant products, so before the car got too dusty, finished things up with a simple damp towel wipe to gently lift off any light but still unsightly spots, which being ceramic and graphene based could become stubborn if left to bake on the surface. And although I'm generally running on fumes at this stage in the day, do still enjoy a final once over of a freshly protected sporty bodied car, so took the time to ensure the majority of it was left spot and smear free, which did also include an off-camera exterior glass clean. And while I'd usually conclude things with some artsy aftershots here, you'll have to hold off for those, as it was time to fast forward a few days so I could put the dedicated Max coat into use on mine. So with my little Honda CRZ essentially being a test mule for the stuff I get sent to feature, made perfect sense to treat a bunch of its currently uncoated surfaces with the Armour Shield Max product to get a good feel for its ease of use and durability. So well over a week after spritzing the Corvette, as that's just how long these things take a UK weather exposed one-man band to execute, set about preparing a few of its Milano red painted, gloss black vinyl wrapped and lacquered carbon fibre surfaces, starting with a good old contact wash to gently take care of any light dirt it had accumulated since its last wash, which incidentally was also my last upload, so do check that out if you haven't already. Once washed, you'll generally want to go on to further decontaminate chemically and or mechanically, and while my well-kept surfaces didn't require the application of potent iron or tar removers, I did run a clay bar over them while they were still wet using some of the remaining Sadistic Suds as extra lubrication, partly just to go through the illustrative motions of removing deeply embedded dirt, but also because the car had fairly recently been waxed and so had to ensure any of that was gone from the areas I intended to treat, as you can't be ceramic coating over previously applied protectants. And while clay barring will generally leave the finish with some light imperfections, you should only really do it if you're also going to properly polish afterwards, which thankfully I was. After quickly drying things down then, both on camera and off, got to work machine polishing the freshly decontaminated sections over in single stage fashion to eliminate the bulk of the light scratches and swirls which, having had the car for well over 2 years now, was long overdue. Now, despite how it might look, this red paintwork is progressively turning pink under the not so protective lacquer, and although polishing like this will serve to remove more of it, the subsequently applied coating should, I hope, serve to slow the fading process overall. But regardless, I spent some time methodically machining each of the areas that I was looking to coat to get them roughly 80% defect free, as being a 13-year-old daily driven outdoor kept car that will likely require plenty of impromptu and potentially gritty post-polish contact washes, absolute perfection was unrealistic and arguably unnecessary. But still, hopefully these shots help to give you a decent idea of at least the minimum amount of enhancement work that should be done prior to ceramic coating. Now, much like with the Corvette, prior to protecting the CRZ, I went ahead and wiped things down with an IPA spray, this time to remove any polish product residue that could interfere with the adherence of the dedicated coating. As although freshly polished surfaces might look crystal clear, that doesn't mean there isn't an invisible film sitting there waiting to throw a spanner in the protective work, so you should always factor in a few final minutes for gently wiping things over with a panel prep type product to ensure the pores of the paintwork are thoroughly unclogged and open to latching onto a long-term protectant, which can be confirmed by the surface feeling grippy under your fingertips rather than slick. And while it may be stating the obvious, you should use either brand new towels to do this or at the very least freshly washed uncontaminated ones to avoid reintroducing light scratches and residues into and onto the freshly polished finish. So with the cleaning, decontaminating, polishing and prep work done, it was finally time to get to grips with the new Armour Shield Max 3-year coating, which comes complete with an updated microfibre applicator to complement its updated formula. So after priming that with a tad more product than you'd use to treat subsequent sections with, set about methodically spreading it over the hybrid bonnet in a traditional crosshatch manner to ensure even and adequate coverage. And while doing so is a pretty straightforward affair, I'm by no means a seasoned ceramic coating guru, so my technique might not be as neat and tidy as it should be. But with a forgiving DIY type product like this, a little bit of slapdash here and there is easily sorted. With the temperature being about 15 degrees Celsius here, I went ahead and removed the product at around the 2-minute mark as is recommended. But you can also watch out for it visibly flashing off on the surface as an additional indicator. But either way, when it came to removal, I first levelled the microfibre applied coating with one of the supplied general purpose towels first to ensure there was no thick streaks or high spots present, before going on to gently buff what remained with a slightly more plush towel until a nice slick smear-free finish was achieved, which, despite working outside, was surprisingly hassle-free. The carbon wing was then treated in pretty much the same manner, which provided a convenient bit of contrast to the red paintwork, both in terms of finish and material. And while the strong summer sun was now doing its best to get involved, thankfully didn't seem to affect either application or removal, which was a big relief, as while you should ideally shy away from ceramic coating a car in the direct sun, it's still good to know that the product you're using won't suddenly throw a hissy fit and become all tacky and unworkable should there be an unforecast break in the clouds mid-application. And although this bit of carbon was pretty clean and shiny to begin with, could see that the Max product had still served to add a new dimension to it and almost amplify the look of the weave below, which for a non-colour coded piece like this is exactly what was needed. Now, despite not being a fan of gloss vinyl for obvious orange peely reasons, I had wrapped the roof of this car soon after getting it to cover the most faded parts of the paintwork, so thought I might as well take advantage of the fact there was a third material present on the body, which I had gone out my way to give a good micro polish and coat a few sections of that too. With the vinyl being black, the ceramic residue was far easier to see on the surface, but that doesn't mean you should get overconfident and abandon the tried and tested crosshatch technique, which will always ensure the most even and adequate coverage, whether the product is easily visible or not. Although I was fully expecting the coating to be a bit awkward to remove from the warm grippy vinyl, it wiped off and buffed up an absolute treat. And while improved shine, gloss and water repellency are all great, a big benefit of using a dedicated ceramic coating on soft material like this over, say, a traditional wax or sealant is that the hardness they can impart once fully cured serves to provide some future scratch and swirl resistance, which, considering vinyl tends to mark just by looking at it, is great. So with the different areas of the car that I wanted to focus on adequately treated, it was then just a case of leaving things be so the coating could cure. And while that technically only takes 4 hours, the forecast was dry for the next few days, so held off spraying it down with water for some closing repellency shots for the best part of 48 hours, instead grabbing some dry lustrous ones in the meantime. In terms of aftercare, which ceramic coatings do need, as despite being durable, they're not a set and forget type product. Avalon King's Shockwave Hydra Shield shampoo will keep things clean and hydrophobic, while either of the Psycho or Psycho Pro detail sprays will help prevent the pores of the coating from becoming clogged and ineffectual over time. And while it goes without saying that it's best to apply ceramic coatings in a controlled environment if possible, if not, it's good to know that there's now readily available, easy to use products that, provided a sufficient amount of prep work is carried out, will enable you to get your car ceramic coated and sufficiently cured al fresco. While I only took a hose pipe to the freshly coated parts of the car here rather than a pressure washer, which looking back would have given more dramatic repellency shots, you could still clearly see that there was a layer of something fresh on the surface that was eager to shed water, repel dirt and more importantly dissipate the sun's damaging rays. And if you'd like the same for your car's surfaces, then the good news is that you can get a generous $15 off the incredibly easy to use new Armour Shield coating with the code CCGMAX via the links below. So while I appreciate it's been a while since my last upload, I'd like to think that the combination of spritzed Corvette and coated CRZ helped make up for that. But if not, hopefully these parting heavy metal aftershots will let you know I'm still very much committed to the cause instead.